Hello everybody, welcome to the United Stand. I'm Mark Goldbridge, and we've got a huge update for Manchester United involving Ruben Amorim and his potential summer transfer budget. And I say potential not because we're going to spin a yarn about, oh, if this happens and that happens, we could get this amount of money. I say potential because it could get better. So effectively, I saw an article this morning and it is accurate. If Manchester United are in the Champions League next season, they will get a minimum of £70 million in revenue. If they lose all 8 games in the Champions League system, they will get £70 million. £70 million just for going in there and losing every single game. Also, they can get a lot more than that. But I want to dispel a few myths here, because this is really big in relation to, yeah, but if we get in the Champions League, most of that money will be gone because of the 33% increase on wages. Wrong. And we'll tell you why. Also, Wayne Rooney has come out with a very, very good comment over the weekend that I think a lot of people have missed around the system. We'll talk about that and potentially, well, not potentially, I think factually, some very big positives for Manchester United around Thursday night and the final if we play Spurs. There are players out injured for the season. Okay, we need a here we go, says Molf. I can't deliver you a here we go. I hope we do get that here we go. I think it'd be a great here we go for Cunha, but I can't deliver you that at the moment. But what I can deliver you is positivity on a plate if Manchester United win this Europa League. So, £70 million minimum for Man United being in the Champions League. Over £100 million if you do quite well. That's what Liverpool did, and they didn't even get past the first knockout stage. So that is a huge boost to Ruben Amorim and his summer transfer window if and when we win the Europa League. But let's say Man United make £100 million from the Champions League. We all know that we owe money because of players that we've already bought and we're playing in instalments. And we also know that 33% is going to go on top of our wage bill next season, because we'll be playing in the Champions League. So Manchester United's current wage bill is rumoured to be between 170 and 180 million pounds. So let's say it's 170 million pounds. If that goes up by around 30%, that's about 50 million pounds. So out of your 100 million pounds from the Champions League, half of it goes on wages on players we've already got, because Casemiro, Marcus Rashford, Bruno Fernandes, at the moment, should be earning 30% less than they normally do because we're not in the Champions League. So when you go into the Champions League, that's going to go up by 30%. So if we've got £100 million from being in the Champions League, half of that goes on wages for players we already own, because they're going to get a 30% pay increase. And that, to be honest, is how the Champions League should work. People will go, oh no, that means we can only spend 50 million quid. But that's how the Champions League should work. If you're in the Champions League, you should get a pay rise. And the money you earn from the Champions League should go towards wages, because ultimately it's the players that put you there. So we can't get greedy and go, I can't believe we've got to give them a 30% pay rise, because that's the whole point. That 100 million shouldn't just be sat there for the Glazers. It should go towards players as well if they're good enough. And that if is the problem. But here's where the positive comes. If we've got 100 million pounds from the Champions League next year, because we've done quite well, and 50 million pounds of that's going to go on wages for current players. What current players? Because I can think of 50 million pounds worth of wages that are gone straight away. There's 15 million going on Lindelof and Eriksen, Rashford, Sancho, Anthony. We can clear 50 million of that 120 million wage bill like that this summer. That's even if we keep Casemiro. If Casemiro goes, you're getting it down to nearly 100 million. Well, 30% of 100 million wages is 30 million, which means you've suddenly got 70 instead of 50. So we will clear some of these wages as well. What I'm saying is, if we get in the Champions League, you're looking at somewhere between 50 and 70 million pounds that will be there to be utilised on a summer transfer window. Now, whether we can trust Sir Jim Radcliffe, whether we can trust Joel Glazer to give that money to Amorim or not, we're all not stupid enough to go, that money's there, where's the players? And as you know, £50 million can get you 3 or 4 players. Good players if you're playing in instalments and planning to be in the Champions League next year. And that's the thing I think, before we move on to another topic, I just want to say. We're not talking telephone numbers here. We're not talking fantasy phone a friend. We are talking reality, fact, substance. If you get in the Champions League, you will earn between 70 and 120 million pounds, depending on how successful you are. That's money we don't have if we don't win the Europa League. And if you do it next year, guess what? You get another 70 to 120 million pounds. If you can stay in that Champions League for a long period of time, you're getting basically around 100 million pounds a year. This is how you survive. This is what people are talking about when they say speculate to accumulate, get some experience in. There is no guarantee next year that we'll be in Europe. None. No guarantee. But we need to be in there, because if I want to buy Cunha, Gyökeres, Ederson, Frimpong, Inacho this summer, I'm still going to be paying for them next summer. So I need to be in the Champions League every year. And then if I'm in the Champions League every year, I can do a lot more. I can rebuild this football club. That is what we need to do. That is what we need to do at Manchester United. Janet, you're blocked. See you later. Apparently I've got something wrong with my nose. Sorry. I don't know what that's all about. It is live. What are you talking about? Where was it? I can't even see it. I don't know. I don't normally check anyway. But yes, this going back to less childish comments from the live chat and dealing with real problems at Manchester United, probably bloody Glazer bots, to be honest, aren't they? We're talking about something really serious. We're talking about the future of Manchester United, and we've got bots in the chat, pro Glazers, talking about snot and bogeys. I mean, come on. I've played the game. Every bloody time we get onto something important, there's always a bunch of twats in the chat trying to change the topic. But look, it is obviously all dependent on winning the Europa League, but we can't keep hiding away from this. Like, it's, you know, Arsene Wenger might be crying about the prospect of us getting into the Champions League. I don't care. What I do care about is, yeah, the silverware will be great, but the season will still be shit. What won't be shit is 100 million quid coming into this football club. And can I just remind you, if we don't win the Europa League, that 100 million pounds, 100 million pounds isn't here anymore. There's nothing. There's no replacement. There's not 50 for being in the Europa League. There's not 20 for being in the Conference League. There is nothing. Absolutely nothing. I don't know why I'm drawing an oblong. There is nothing. So this needs to happen. And it needs to happen every year. I mean, imagine Arsenal. Arsenal are doing this every year now. Every year they're tapping into this 100 million. It's crazy what it can do. And as I say, yes, the wage bill will go up by 30%, but our wage bill is going to come down anyway a lot this summer because we're moving out a lot of wages and we're replacing them with, guess what? Cheap young players. So there is going to be a pot of money there this summer, and that absolutely needs to be spent on the best we can get so that next summer we're back in the Champions League again. There's no point, right? I suppose the simplest way of saying this, there's no point buying Cunha for 60 million and saying to Wolves, we're going to give you 15 million for the next 4 years. And we can afford it this year because we're in the Champions League. And then next year, we're not in the Champions League and we're going, where's that 15 million coming from? What you need is Champions League football every year. So you go, Wolves, there's your money. And oh, I think we'll get another Cunha now. And there's your money. And we keep doing it and we keep growing that way. That's what we need to do. They're not ignore them. They're not funny, says James. What is the realistic goalkeeper target this summer, says Sim J? I don't think there is one. Let's not forget the increase in sponsorships, says Faisal. Well, I'm not here to talk about that. I don't know what's going to happen with that. But what I do know is that we do need to, we can only deal with what we know. And these numbers are factual and they're game changers, really big game changers. Talking about game changers, just very quickly, it is a news show at 2 o'clock. I don't normally do it. It's bank holiday in the UK, so a lot of our staff are off today, including Beth. But the point is that there is some topical news coming out. We'd sort of hinted at it previously. James Maddison looks like he's out for the season for Spurs. We already know that Bergvall is as well. So they've lost 2 big players for themselves already. I'm more interested in them not playing on Thursday and Bodo Glimt hopefully beating them. I really want Bodo Glimt to beat Spurs. I would much rather play Bodo Glimt in the final. Not because I think we'll beat them. I mean, I do. But I just don't want to play Spurs in the final. I just don't want to. So that's about that. Also, some people are getting really excited about Nico Williams not training with Athletic Club today. He wasn't on the bench at all yesterday or in the starting lineup when they played Sociedad. He hasn't trained today. It's Monday. He's already done an interview talking about doing a Yamal on Thursday at Old Trafford and hopefully his brother chipping in with some goals as well. He will play on Thursday. It's the biggest game of their season. He is going to be back. The fact that he hasn't trained today is immaterial. He will play on Thursday and I don't care. We've beat them 3-0. We've got a very big lead. It's at Old Trafford. It needs to be a cauldron. The players need to be on it. We need to win this game and go through. Whether Nico Williams is playing, Inaki Williams, or even their best player gets back from injury, I don't care. Bring it on. Let's have a look at Constantine's given us a super chat. I want to talk about what Wayne Rooney had to say as well. He said, my only issue, here we go, Constantine, he likes it. He likes a debate. Ali, welcome to the Members Club as well. Constantine says, my only issue with prioritising the Europa League is it allows us to be crap in the league. Being a long-time supporter, we have always prioritised domestic form over Europe. I hope we can find our way next season. I don't think you've been a long-time supporter then, mate. When have we always prioritised the league over Europe? I don't think you've been a long-term supporter, mate, because we haven't always done that at all. There's been plenty of seasons where we've prioritised Europe over the Premier League. Sir Alex Ferguson used to do it. I've told you before, there was numerous seasons under Sir Alex where the season fell flat. We still won the league, but we got knocked out in the champion. I'll tell you what, there'll be some people of a certain age who remember exactly what I'm talking about. We had quite a few seasons under Sir Alex where we got knocked out of the Champions League. And even though we went on to win the league, it felt really flat because we were prioritising trying to win the Champions League because we were winning the Premier League so often. Look at Jose Mourinho prioritising the Europa League over the Premier League. It's not unusual. You can't criticise Amorim for doing something that's not been done before. Like, I understand. I had this chat with Robbie from AFTV today. He was saying that Arsenal picked quite a strong team against Bournemouth. And he was saying, we should have just not picked a strong team. We should have picked the kids. And I was like, you picked a strong team and lost, and people are saying Arteta out. If you'd picked the kids and lost 6-0, imagine what would have happened. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. That's the situation that you're in. So, Amorim, people are going to come for him regardless because they've made their mind up. And the majority are going to back him because they back him. But he's not doing anything unique in prioritising the Europa League over the Premier League. Absolutely has been done before. I respect the fact that you think we shouldn't be doing that. That's your opinion. That's your prerogative. You can do that. But it's not unusual to do it. And it's actually quite logical. I mean, I don't know how many of you have been watching the United Stand for how long you've been watching it, but we've had these conversations, Constantine, before. Maybe not when you were here. I don't know how long you've been watching the channel. But we've had these conversations before on That's Football as well, where I've said, in my opinion, when you hit March, end of March, that international break, if you're in the Champions League, fine. Maybe you can do the Champions League and the league. But if you're in the Europa League, you've got to prioritise one or the other. Because Thursday, Sunday is a killer. It's an absolute killer. Champions League, predominantly, you're going to do Wednesday, Saturday afternoon, which is what, pretty much the same. But you might do Wednesday, Sunday. You might do Tuesday, Saturday. In the Champions League, you tend to get a little bit more leeway of a day here and there than you do in the Europa League, where it's always Thursday night and it's normally Sunday afternoon. The turnaround time is too quick. And if you've got a squad that's not quite good enough, which tends to be the case if you're in the Europa League because you're not in the Champions League, there's very few teams that get anywhere near a title race or top four and win the Europa League. I think Chelsea did it, but it's very rare. So I think you have to prioritise one or the other. I think it's very difficult to do both, especially when you've got the squad that we've got. Anyway, I wanted to talk about what Wayne Rooney had to say. Nearly 10,000 tuning in on a Goldbridge 2 p.m. Love that. Thanks everyone who's tuning in. Make sure you smash a like and subscribe to the channel. You're very, very welcome. So Wayne Rooney, look, I treat ex-players like I treat my women. No, that doesn't even work. I'm loyal because I'm married. But no, I'm not loyal to ex-players. I treat ex-players like I treat you. In the sense that I think your opinion is as good as any ex-player. I think sometimes ex-players talk complete and utter rubbish, Rio. And I think sometimes players speak some sense and some rubbish, Scholesy. And I think Rooney sometimes speaks rubbish and sometimes speaks sense. And I was listening to Rooney. Now, considering Rooney, I think is quite a decent pundit, to be honest, sometimes, which I think is a compliment because, like me, like you, football's a very opinionated sport and we don't hit all the time. We miss a lot. So Wayne Rooney's got kids who are part of the Man United Academy anyway, but he said in an interview over the weekend that he found it strange that Manchester United's youth teams aren't playing the same system as Amorim. i.e., and some of you might know the answer to this, we're still playing a 4-3-3 in our youth setup. We're not playing the 3-4-3. And he was basically saying it's a bit strange, really, because you're taking young players from the youth setup with the hope that they're going to come through, and they're not actually playing the system in the youth team yet. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to bring this into the United Stand because the United Stand community is very, we like to go deeper on topics. We don't just like to go, is it Cunha Day, this, that, and the other, and, make stuff up. I like to observe intelligent conversation where possible. And I think there's an even bigger level we can take this to as well. I like to take a debate point and then take it to a better debate point with you. So if that's true, and it is an excellent comment from Rooney, Joe. I think it is, and I think we should, we do this on the regular. If we see a good comment from Scholes or Keane or Rooney, we'll bring it in. It's not always about, another ex-player with a crap take. It is sometimes, of course, but I think that's a really good observation. If the youth teams are playing 4-3-3 and the first team is playing 3-4-3, then that is strange because Van Gaal, Ten Hag, we played their system. It was one of the first things they did. So have we just abandoned that until the summer and said, look, it isn't working with the first team, so why mess up the youth teams? In which case, I would say, great, because coming in November and changing every youth team system makes complete and utterly no sense. So I suspect this has to change. It is strange, like every team has to play the same way that the first team is playing. Otherwise, the pathway is harder. It's very difficult for 18, 19-year-olds to step up to the first team anyway. It's even more difficult if they're playing one system and then they've got to play another. So we do need to do that. My suspicion is that we're going to start doing it from the summer. And hopefully that's going to be the case. But also, what's the point? And we definitely have this. What's the point in having an obsessive youth recruitment policy and then not having a similar system being played from the youth to the first team? What's the point in bringing an 18-year-old from France? What's the point in bringing a 17-year-old from Arsenal? What's the point in bringing a 16-year-old from Norway and then sticking them into a 4-3-3? And then the youth team going, we think they're ready for the first team. They drop in and they've got to learn a new system as well. Basically, look at it like a language, yeah? Your head office is in Germany and everybody speaks German, right? But your academy is in France and they're all speaking French. And somebody rings up the head office and says, this person is amazing. You need to get them in to the head office now. And they come over and you go, we've heard you're talented. And they go, bonjour, je m'appelle Franck. Quel j'ai 12 ans, which I think is 12, which is too young. Get out. But you know what I mean? Like that makes no sense. That makes no sense if you're bringing him in from an academy and you're speaking a different language. You've got to bring that unity in. So Rooney's right about that. What I would say is, I think it's a great point. It was something I wasn't aware of, and we've spoken about a lot before. But it has to change in the summer. And I would say they're going to change it in the summer. If they're not going to change it in the summer, that's terrifying. You cannot have youth teams playing a different system to the first team. But I would give it some leeway. I know Rooney said it's strange, but there is an asterisk to that. It's not strange if it's a conscious decision from Amorim and the board and the technical director, Wilcox, to say, we're going to do this, but we'll do it in this summer. We've got way too much going on at the moment. Let's keep them familiar for the season, and then we'll bring it in the summer. Because you're also developing these players, and you could damage them if they start the season with a 4-3-3, and then in November you go, we're changing to a 3-4-3, and then the results change, their confidence, they lose 6 months. So hopefully that's what we're going to do in the summer. But I thought it was a really good observation. Would you take Eze at United if the price was reasonable, says Richie? I think it's a good question, and I think the obvious answer is yes. If he was available for 50 million quid, you probably would say yes. But a more cultured or technical answer would be no, because if I'm getting Cunha and I've got Xerxes and I've got Garnacho and I've got Ahmad and I've got Mount and I've got Bruno, I've got 6 number 10s. There is no way in a million years Eze is a winger. So he can only really play in those 2 positions. So yeah, Eze's a fantastic player, but if I'm getting Cunha, I don't need another Mbumo, Eze, Cherki, or anybody else like that. Unless you're telling me I'm selling Mount or whatever like that. And just going back to that wage bill very, very quickly. At the start of the show, we were basically saying if Man United get in the Champions League, they'll earn a minimum of £70 million. Could easily get £100 million, but obviously the wage bill is going to go up by 30%. Your wage bill can't go up by 30% if players aren't there anymore. So 15 million is off the wage bill straight away with Eriksen and Lindelof gone. Marcus Rashford's on 300 grand a week. That's another 15 million, isn't it? So that's 30 million gone already. Sancho, the same, 45 million. Anthony's on probably about 10 million, 55 million. So you're 55 million gone in wages straight away. You can't pay 30% on top of that when it's not there. That's bringing your wage bill down all the time. But Luke Shaw, 200 grand a week. Mason Mount, 250 grand a week. That's 450 grand a week. That's £4.5 million every 10 weeks. Times that by 5 to get to a year. That's over £20 million. You could take another £20 million off your wages for 2 players who offer nothing. And you're going to give them 30% pay rise. You know, it's a lot. There's a lot of ways we can save money by getting rid of shit. Deadwood, sorry, yeah. Mark says, great shows, Mark. Have you considered this is why we're recruiting all these youth players, so we have the players available to play his system? I think we're recruiting a lot of young players because they're cheap. And the hope is that we can develop them and make money on them, or they'll be first-team players. I think that's why we're buying young players. I think Sir Jim Radcliffe's looked at Chelsea and looked at Brighton and got very excited and gone, at the end of the day, give me a piece of that pie. You know, young, cheap, and we can sell them in the future, or they'll be first-team players cheap as well. I mean, look, I get it. If I'm Sir Jim Radcliffe, I'm going, get me as many cheap young players that might be world-class as possible. Because if they don't make the first team, but they're cheap, we'll sell them for profit. If they do make the first team, they're cheap, and they're in the first team. So I think that's, at the end of the day, the plan. But as somebody who's watched football for many years, and like you, I look at it and go, that can't be the philosophy to be successful. Like, we need to be in the Champions League next year, the year after that, the year after that, the year after that. Can't wait 4 or 5 years for young players to become potentially first-team players. You need to get some first-team players in now and start getting us in the Champions League. Because, as somebody said the other day, if you get a load of learner drivers and you've only got 1 instructor, it's going to be years before they pass their test. If you get a load of learner drivers and you get 6 or 7 instructors, they're going to pass their test a lot quicker. And that's the mic drop of the analogy, isn't it? Stop buying loads of learner drivers when you haven't got enough instructors. Because there'll be a bottleneck of who comes through because they can't all be taught. Get more instructors in, experienced players, and you'll have a faster fast track of the young players coming through as well. That's what we need to do. You need this summer to bring in another De Ligt, another Mazraoui. I think we need another 4 or 5, especially if De Ligt's going to be out for a long period of time. That's another instructor gone. Martinez is out for a long time. That's gone. Ericsson's an instructor in some ways or short as well. Stephen Coley, welcome to Members Club. Prioritising European success this season is how we prioritise the league's success long term, says James. Look, I feel I need to answer this before I go because it's not fair to be a dictatorship, and it's not fair to not be pragmatic, and it's not fair to be play devil's advocate. The United Stand is a community. We've always had debates. It's always got heated at times, and there will always be people who have different opinions than you, and that should be embraced. There are people out there who are legitimately angry about the league. I wouldn't say that I and many of you aren't angry about the league. I think we're just realists. The league is terrible, but I don't even think there'll be a post-mortem if we win the Europa League. There should be. There really, really should be. But I think if we win the Europa League, nobody will give it a second thought. They'll be like, whatever, not thinking about that. Bring on the summer transfer window. We're back in the Champions League. So the league is a thing. It's embarrassing. And the points total is a joke. And the losses are disgraceful. But it will only become a real thing if we don't win the Europa League. In which case, we need to win the Europa League because we're going to be in an absolute pit if we don't. But what I think I have to say, and I'd love to get people's comments on this if you're not watching live, or if you are, is you can't just say we're focused on the Europa League, forget the Premier League, it's all about winning the Champions League, and then when somebody says, but what happens next season, go, don't care. I can't bury that one like a cat buries a crap. I can bury the Premier League this season by covering it up with the Europa League. But I can't bury what happens next season. And I certainly can't paper the cracks because the Europa League hype will last the summer and the transfer window. And then the middle of August, reality bites. We're back playing games again. And how quick until we're back in the bottom half of the table again. I look at next season. I look at the possibilities of the summer transfer window. I don't think we'll be in the top 6 next season, but I think we have to be aiming to be in the top 6 next season. So when I say I don't think we'll be in the top 6 next season, that's because I look at Arsenal, Manchester City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Newcastle, Villa, and say they're all better than us, factually by a very long way. So I can't just go, yeah, we're going to land in there. Here we land. I can't do that because the squad isn't good enough, even with Cunha. But with the right recruitment, the right pre-season, I think that's where we've got to be aiming to be. So I'm not in any way, shape or form dismissing those people who are angry about the Premier League. What I'm saying is our focus is the Europa League, and next season we judge on the Premier League properly with a pre-season and a transfer window. And so much of that is dependent on what we do in the Champions League. But I would expect Man United to be around fighting for top 6. I don't know whether we'll get it, but I would expect us to be fighting for top 6 next season. Otherwise, what's the bloody point? Whether I believe we'll get it or not is immaterial. We're Manchester United. With the wages and players we've got, what did we expect at the start of the season? Nobody was saying we're going to be in the bottom half. We were looking at top 4. So Matthew Sinnott says, just following on from your analogy, this is even more pressing for an experienced striker. If we get someone in, I think you should start seeing an improvement in Obi, Rasmus and Xerxes. I completely agree, Matthew. And are the youth coaches competent to coach the 3-4-3, says Anthony Julian? Well, again, that's why I think we've maybe held it off till the summer, because Amorim came in with quite a small coaching team in November. And if you're going to change the whole football club, it's very unlikely you're going to have youth team coaches ready to go in November as well. So I think Rooney's right. It's strange that we're still playing a 4-3-3 in the youth setup, but I would pretty much be expecting it to be 3-4-3 going forward into next season when we get the right coaches in, certainly. During his first United interview, Amorim noted that he cares more about principles than youth team playing the same formation, says Peter. Well, he can care about what he bloody well likes. His job's on the line. You know, principles ain't going to keep you in a job, mate. The reality is the pathway from the youth team to the first team is far better if everybody's playing the same system. He can have his principles, but he can take his principles in his bag when he gets the sack, and everyone says you should have done that. I back Amrim. I want him to do really, really well, but I completely disagree, and I agree with Rooney that if you're going to play a system like a 3-4-3, which is quite unique, so unique it's hard to recruit players for it, then your youth team better be playing it. There's a reason every other club has their youth team playing the same system as the first team, because it creates an easier pathway. And, you know, these are young players at the end of the day. The expectations are very big at Manchester United. You don't want to make it harder for them. So I think we will see that change in the summer. Rocket Game says, I'm backing Amrim until the very end. He's our guy. Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I'm backing him. I don't want to sack another manager, but I just want to see us win the Europa League, get some of this money in, buy some quality, experienced players, have a proper pre-season, and have a proper go at next season, and try and get ourselves back into the Champions League. Look, if we win the Europa League and we get in the Champions League, one of my big priorities for the start of next season is to get back in the Champions League. That might be the priority. We're not going to win the league, are we? We're not going to win the Champions League if we're in it. But I would expect to be back in the Champions League because I think that's so important. And for a club that's motivated by money, I'd be stunned if that's not the same. Great show. Brilliant 2 o'clock. Absolutely lovely to be talking about something a little bit different than Mbumo, Cunha or Gyökeres. So really enjoyed that show. And thank you everybody who tuned in live. Really, really good conversation. We're back at 8 o'clock live with me tonight. Looking forward to that. Make sure you smash a like and subscribe as always. Get your comments in if you didn't watch live. And I will speak to you all in a little bit. Take care. Stay safe. Thanks for watching. And I'll speak to you soon.